Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. I hope you're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. Okay, today on the channel we have a preview of an upcoming RPG called Slay the Dragon. Now, I have seen this game pop up in my Facebook feed a couple of times over the last month or so, and I know there is a little bit of buzz about this from some people in the Dungeon Dive community. And the designer, Wojciech Rosinski, I believe, reached out to me and asked if I would like to take a look at this prototype copy. And I thought it looked pretty interesting. I love the art, and so I agreed to take a look at it. So this preview copy was provided to the channel as a preview for a preview video. In today's video, we will take a look at the stuff you will get in the base box, at least the stuff that was provided to me in this prototype. And we'll also take a look at the prototype for the My Little Dungeon and the Monstrous Menagerie expansions that do include a whole bunch of really cool cardboard standees slash cardboard minis. And those are very, very cool. So let's read a little bit about Slay the Dragon before we dive in. Slay the Dragon is a fantasy role-playing game. A group of adventurers wander deep into ancient magical ruins. The artifact they hope to find is the only way to save the kingdom. But bloodthirsty monsters, dangerous traps, and greed lurking in the hearts of the heroes stand in the way. Will their mission succeed? It's entirely up to you and your players. So out of the box, Slay the Dragon is not a solo game. However, I think it is an easy game to be made into solo using any of the various oracles that we've talked about on the channel or that other channels have talked about. But there are no solo rules in the box, at least that I know of. Maybe the official game will have solo rules, I'm not sure. Now, I have not played Slay the Dragon yet, so this overview is coming from the perspective of me reading the rulebook and thinking about the game and contemplating about it. And I think it sounds pretty interesting and has some neat ideas. There are some elements where I wish it maybe was a little more fleshed out, and I think it is missing just a few things, but we'll talk about those as we discuss the game. So a lot of the stuff that was included in the box is still in Polish. And so they are in the process of translating everything into English. I will post a link to the website. And from the website, in exchange for your email, you can download the Slay the Dragon Starter Dungeon. And this Starter Dungeon zine that you can download as a PDF will have your basic rules in it, as well as a dungeon for the game master to run the players through, or you could probably figure out a way to turn this into some kind of little solo RPG. I also had access to the full basic rules in English, and so I printed out my own little zine so I could have access to the full basic rules, because the full basic rules included in the box here are still in Polish. And so that didn't do me a lot of good, but there are a couple other books that are also in Polish, and I am not sure exactly what they are, but I have taken a guess. So this, I believe, is some kind of book about treasure and magic, magical treasures and certain things. I wish I had access to this in English, so I'm not exactly sure what this is. Maybe the designer will see this video and he can let us know. We also have the Polish starter rules, but those were provided in English. And we have this, I believe this is a collection of various adventures and kind of an almanac of the world, and some creatures and some cities, some civilizations, and just some things for the GM to use to run various adventures. And I really do like the look. It has a really clean look. The stat blocks are clean. The dungeons look clean. The drawings are very kind of bold and clean. I just noticed that we also get a standee for this kind of frog god shrine here. Kum Kum, or something like that. Very cool. So yeah, I do like the look of this game a lot. And a few of the other things we'll show are also in Polish, but let's go ahead and take a look at the basic rules here. And in doing so, we'll start off by creating a character, because I always think that you can learn a lot about the game that you are playing by the character creation. So here we have Slay the Dragon. We have our basic introduction. This is kind of a combination of an OSR, an old school game, with some modern sensibilities, with some modern mechanisms. It is very much focused on dungeon crawling and that kind of old school adventure. It is one of those games where your gold also is your experience points. You can get XP in other ways as well, but one of the main ways your character is going to gain experience points is through collecting treasure. So it is a collecting treasure style game. And he does list some inspirations here: Black Hack, Basic Fantasy Role Playing, Derf, Knave, Cairn, the Flick Silver Pin's Guide to Dragon Town. I am not familiar with that, and Map Crow. And we've had some, we've shown some of Map Crow's maps on the channel before. His maps are pretty cool. But here we have our basic character sheet. And so we will have a name for our name, our ancestry, our archetype, our various proficiencies, which are basically skills. We have health, mana. Our main stats are skill, strength, speed, and sorcery. And then we have a place for our armor, place for wounds, and then a place for some of our adventuring supplies. We have supplies, tools, and components. So a lot of these supplies in this game are abstracted out, and I do enjoy that. Keeping a track of how long your torch is able to burn for is very important, because light is important when you go into the dungeons. It is easy to get lost. So here, the first thing we do when we create our character is we roll our attributes. And each character is represented by 7 attributes. We have skill, strength, speed, sorcery, health, mana, and movement. And so to come up with your skill represents how good the character is at doing complicated things, which are not linked to other attributes. So it's kind of a catch-all attribute. And for that, we do roll a d3. Okay, so let's see what my character's skill is here. And a 6. Okay, so we have a 3 for skill. My character is very skillful. Your stats here, that is the number that you will roll, that you will add to rolls when you're trying to overcome various challenges. Okay, so let's see how strong my character is. Again, that's a D3. Ooh, a 1. Okay, so not very strong. So I have a feeling I'll probably be some kind of rogue or something. Let's see, speed here. This is how quickly I move and react to danger. Okay, so that would be a 2. Sorcery describes how quickly the character can, or I'm sorry, sorcery describes the character's ability to cast spells as well as their power. Okay, 1. I definitely will not be a sorcerer or a fighter here. Health describes how much damage the character can take before they are wounded, and that would be a 2d6 plus 3. So we have 2, 6 plus 3 is 9. So I have 9 as my maximum health. Mana describes how many spells the character can cast and is tracked in mana points. Roll 2d3. Okay, so there is a 2 and a 2, 4. So you actually spend your spell points on casting spells at certain levels. And then finally, we have our move. Our move describes how many spaces or squares, hexes, and so on the character can move. It's equal to 3 plus your speed. So my movement is 5 there. I think here it shows that movement is derived from sorcery. So I think the arrow should actually be coming from speed there. So you might need to get a little bit of an update on the character card there. So now we can choose our ancestry. And we have human, elf, dwarf, and orc. Humans, when rolling for proficiencies, roll an additional d20 on the skills table. So a human will have 1 additional skill. Elves will raise our sorcery and mana by 1 each. Dwarf, you will raise your HP by maximum by 3, and you get 2 slots in your backpack so you can carry more. Normally, a character can carry their strength plus 3 items. So I can only carry 4 items here in my backpack, and an orc raises their strength by 1. I think I'm going to be a human, so I will write human here as my ancestry. Okay, and then I will pick my archetype. So here is your archetype, and the archetype will also grant you your proficiencies, which are basically your skills. So archetypes decide your character's starting proficiencies, roll in skills and spells table according to the structure in the description. I think I'm going to be a traveler can also cast spells and gets 2 skills, but I think I'll be a rogue. A rogue gets 1, 2, 3, 4 rolls on the proficiency table. I do have a pretty good skill. So yes, I'm going to be a rogue. And so I'll write rogue here. Rogue or adventurer. That is commonly a class that I like to play, especially when I play something like Scarlet Heroes. And let's see, what will my name be? I think my name will be, let's go back to the normal, one of my standbys. My name will be Harlan. And I'm a male human rogue. So I think the proficiency system in this game is pretty interesting, and it's something that I did want to highlight. And so we have a whole list here of skills. So this is your skill table, and they're kind of marked off in sections. So 1 through 6, you have a random d20 roll that you can roll. 1 through 6, you will get your fighting skills. And so if you roll low, you have a good chance of learning something like swordplay, polearms, axes. So this will give you proficiencies in a weapon. And then from, it looks like from about 7 to 16 or so, we do have some more roguish or adventuring style skills. And then from 17 to 20, we have things that are more associated with cunning characters or intelligent characters or magic users. And so, as you can imagine, a roll of a d20, you have a very swingy chance of learning any kind of skill. And then certain types of archetypes will have a better chance of hitting certain numbers. And I think that's a really cool way to handle a random skill table. But as a rogue, let's see what we get to roll. As a rogue, we get to roll a d6 plus 10 twice. Okay, so let's do that here. I'll roll my numbers and then we'll look it up. So a d6 plus 10. Okay, so a 5, and that is 15. 3 is 13. Now, I don't think it says what you do if you roll twice. And I think you would just re-roll or maybe take whatever becomes before or after. I'm not exactly sure. We also get a d10 plus 10 for skills. So let's take my d10 here. So a d10 plus 10 is 13. So I did double that. So let's just roll again. 15, 12, okay. And then finally, we get 1 d20 for skills. And 18. Okay, so let's check out which skills we are proficient in. So we have a 15. A 15 is thievery. We have a 13, and that is survival. We have a 12, that is stealth. And we do have an 18, which is alchemy. So as you can see, we didn't end up with a weapon proficiency. I think if I was to play this game solo, I would make my starting character a little more powerful by allowing them to choose a weapon proficiency. And so here, since I didn't, or they can maybe choose one additional skill of their choice. And so I think here I'm going to take swordplay just as a weapon proficiency, so I am at least somewhat decent in combat. As a solo player, I would allow myself that kind of house rule. So thievery, I can pickpocket and other kinds of manual tricks that require finesse. survival, tracking, handling wild animals, and navigating in the wilderness, stealth, hiding, moving silently, or masking your identity, alchemy, brewing elixirs and potions, and swordplay, fighting using swords, sabers, and rapiers, and so on. So those will give you some very, very general ideas of what your skills are for. So now I get to choose my starting gear, and your character starts your adventure with choose one, any weapon the character is proficient in, or a dagger. Now the dagger seems to be a really important part to this game, and I'm not quite sure why. There's even a special place on your character's sheet here to mark that you have a dagger. And I'm not exactly sure why the dagger is so important. Maybe that is a fail-safe weapon, something you kind of maybe always have on you if you buy one. Maybe it doesn't take up any of your backpack slots. I'm not sure. The rule might be in here, but I just couldn't find why they specifically call out a dagger here. But I think I will take a, let's say a short sword here. There aren't a lot of differences between weapons, and we'll look at the weapon table in a little bit here. But I will take my short sword. And choose one. We can choose chainmail, leather armor, lantern, and 3 tools, gambeson, elixir of mana, and 3 components. As an adventurer, as a rogue, I would choose the leather armor, which gives me 2 armor points. So armor points in this game, they don't make it harder for your character to be hit. You spend a point of armor to negate all damage from an attack. And as soon as that armor goes down to 0, that armor needs to be repaired. And until it is repaired, you will take full damage from all attacks. And then I also get 3 tools. And tools are things that you can use on your adventure that correspond to things that an adventurer might need. And so this is all of your abstracted thieves tools, your ropes, your lockpicks, your spike, your caltrops, and so on. So that would be all of our tools are covered in those 3 abstracted kind of values there. You also get tomes with all of the spells your character is proficient in. 6 is supplies. So supplies is a little more generic than tools. Supplies would actually be things like your torch, maybe your rations, things that a normal kind of scout might have in their backpack. And then if you have a ranged weapon, you can actually spend 1 supply to add 6 ammunition. And so that's the way that supplies and tools are used. Components are a generic currency that a magic user can spend to make a spell more powerful or to have a better chance of casting a spell. I can't exactly remember, but components will help magic users use their magic. And so playing the game is rather simple. You have a difficulty rating, and the difficulty rating ranges from easy to heroic, and that is from 10 to 22 with 3-point spreads there. So from easy to average, you add 3. From average to challenging, you add an additional 3, and so on. So you get 10, 13, 16, 19, and 22. And the way you overcome a challenge is the game master will assign a challenge. So let's say it is an average challenge to climb something. And climbing, you could argue, would use skill. So I would roll a d20 plus my skill of 3, needing a 13 or higher. And I rolled a 4, which gave me a 7, which would fail. And so I would take some kind of penalty there. So a strength check is something that you use, of course, if you're using your brute strength, forcing a door, moving a giant boulder. A speed check is to accomplish something that you might need agility or dexterity for. A sorcery check is if you're using to cast a spell. And a skill check is all other tests. Trying to hit an enemy in combat or use one of your skills is a speed test. And if you are proficient in the skill that you are testing, you get to add your level. And all characters start at level 1. So as a thief, if I was using my thieving skills, I would get to add a +3 for my skill and a +1 for my level. So that's how all of that works. Experience points are mainly gained through getting treasure and in defeating enemies in combat. And experience points aren't spent, it is a total. And as soon as you hit 3,000, you are up to level 5. And you can raise your HP and your magic points and gain proficiencies in other skills as you level up from level 1 to level 5. So combat, the main kind of conflict here in this game is combat because you will be spending a lot of time in dungeons and you will be spending quite a bit of time in combat. And combat is somewhat interesting in that it really is an exchange of blows. And combat is all player focused, so all of the dice rolls will be done by the players, not by the GM. And so when you are attacking, your character can do damage. However, your character can also do damage when they are defending. So it is that idea of an exchange of blows. The attacking and defending parts of combat are not separated out like they are in some RPGs. And depending on what weapon you are using, you will get a bonus to your attack or your defense. So I have a sword here. When I am attacking, I get a +2. When I am defending, I also get a +2. And if you defend a ranged attack with a melee attack, you actually can't do damage. But you can still use a ranged weapon to defend against melee. It's kind of an interesting little combat system, and I do like that you can do damage during all phases of the combat. I think that will help to kind of speed up combat, and I think that is a good system for converting this into a solo game. And so there are a number of different actions you can take in combat. You can attack, use an item, cast a spell, take aim. So that'll give you careful aim, but then you'll have disadvantage on your defense. Advantage and disadvantage are just like they are in most games. You roll twice. If you have advantage, you take the highest. If you have disadvantage, you take the lowest. You can charge, which is like a run and attack. You can dash. You can interact with various elements, or you can wait. And waiting will allow other players or other characters to go ahead of you so you can kind of be more on the defensive. Dungeon exploration is pretty detailed in this game. You do need to worry about torches and light, and a torch can last for 4 complete dungeon rounds. And a dungeon round is about 15 minutes. So your torches do burn up pretty quickly, and then you need to spend a point of supply in order to have another torch. I think this is one other area where if I was playing solo in this game, I might bring along with me an NPC who's kind of a pack mule style character who is there just to help me balance the number of supplies, tools, and components that I might be missing because I'm only taking one character into a dungeon. So I'd have kind of a little torchbearer character, a hireling, and so on. Searching for stuff, this is the only part of the game where the game master does roll, and they do roll in secret. So there is an idea of this concealment degree, and that is a CD, and that is a number from 1 to 6 that the game master can assign things that are hidden. And then when a character says they want to search for something, the GM will roll, and if they roll above that number, then the character finds the thing. But I imagine that you could just making that a player-focused role doesn't really change too many things. It will allow the player to know what the CD value is of the thing they are looking for. So you might want to develop some kind of system where maybe you roll and then you pull a number out of a bag, or you roll 2d6 and one is for your roll, your search, and the other is for a variable, a random CD. And so maybe you never know exactly what you need to roll. So there are ways that you could come up with a solution for playing that kind of thing solo. One of the moves that you can take, and I'm not sure why they call this out, but one of the moves you can take is called lead the party, leading the party into an adjacent segment of the dungeon, of the ruin, of the dark forest, whatever you are exploring. And they do call this out leading the party. A character can lead any number of willing party members into an adjacent dungeon segment. These characters retain their actions for the round and can still use them after the movement. In case of a trap, the only character that falls into it is the one who leads the way. And to lead the way, you do have to have a torch. I'm not sure if that is the only way you can move into an adjacent segment. I think it should be a little more detailed here in calling out this move, this dungeon move. But you can get lost in the dark, and if you're lost in the dark, the level of your characters plays an important part in determining whether they can find their way out. So it is possible to get lost in the dark in a dungeon, and if you don't have enough supplies or tools, then you could die just by getting lost in the dungeon. At certain points, your armor value will eventually go down to 0 because it has absorbed enough damage. And so you do need to fix your armor. And so here we have our chart on how to fix armor. Casting spells is pretty interesting in this game. The spell list is a random roll of 1 through 20. So there aren't different levels of spells. However, each spell that you learn can be cast at 3 different levels, and you get to choose which level you want to cast that spell at. And the level that you cast, that's how many magic points it costs to cast it. And so if you can cast a whole bunch of level 1 spells or a whole bunch of spells at level 1, and you can cast fewer spells at levels 2 and 3. I think that's a pretty interesting system. And then each level will have its own difficulty rating, starting at level 1 with 13 and going up 3 each to level 3 at 19. I think this is pretty interesting here too. Some spells are more powerful or useful than others. They were designed this way on purpose, as sorcery represents the fantastical and chaotic nature of the world the game takes place in. When playing Slay the Dragon, the game master needs to accept that a well-timed spell can direct the adventure into a completely unexpected territory. And then again, I wanted to call out up here is if you have your components, and the components act as a currency that the magic user can spend to gain advantage on the casting check. I love currencies in games like this. I don't know. There's just something about having a currency that I get to choose when to spend in order to give myself some kind of bonus, some kind of leg up on a challenge. I think it's a really easy and interesting way to add some player agency. But we have all kinds of different spells from telekinesis to necromancy, electromancy, illusion. Let's take a look at necromancy and look at the differences between the levels. So if you cast necromancy as a first level spell, you summon a ghost of the target corpse that enables the caster to communicate with it. At the third level, raises a number of corpses up to the caster's sorcery as skeletons that will obey the caster's commands. At second level, you can deal 3 plus your sorcery. My sorcery here, my character only has a sorcery of 1. Deals 3 plus your sorcery damage to a chosen creature. The caster recovers an amount of HP equal to the damage dealt this way. So that's kind of a vampiric power there. And so all characters can cast spells. If I find a tome that has a spell in it, then I can cast it even as a rogue. And so that is kind of cool. And then here we get into our equipment and loot. Again, ammunition is represented by supplies, and 1 point of supplies equals 6 ammunition. Your weapons will have an attack value and a defense value. So all weapons can be used for defense, and that is true even with ranged weapons. And then here we get into our details about supplies, tools, and components. So Slay the Dragon is a system built around the core principle of the player characters being seasoned adventurers who know exactly what they might need during an expedition. So I do like that. I like when things like your ropes, your torches, your caltrops, your crampons, and all of that stuff, when that is abstracted out to certain things. And here we get into some of the details. So supplies, they cost 1 gold. I'm not sure if that's 1 gold per tick or 1 gold to fill up all of your ticks. I'm not sure. But we have supplies are consumed in high quantities, include food, ammunition, torches. We have tools, and those cost 5 gold, represent specialized equipment necessary for complex actions. So you have tool sets, lockpicks, ropes, ladders, and healing kits. And then your components also cost 5. And those represent items imbued with magical properties such as alchemical ingredients or trinkets necessary for spell casting. And we have some other commodities here: helmets, extra supplies, extra tools, antidotes, fake treasure can be exchanged for 46 for the purpose of fleeing from a fight. That's really cool, actually. I like that a lot. And I think one of the most interesting elements of this game is the loot bag and treasure. And so there are a number of cardboard tokens that you will throw in this loot bag here. And you will put those in there and mix them up. And when a character finds treasure on their adventures, they draw one of these from the bag. So I drew this little chit here, and it is a little trinkets maybe, and it is a D6. So I have D6 worth of this kind of treasure. While you are in a dungeon, while you are adventuring, it is too dangerous to sort through your treasure. You don't have time to see exactly what you have. So you keep these until the end of the adventure. And then you exchange those, you spend those to roll on these various treasure charts to see what you actually found. So a D6 is currency. So let's say that on my adventure, I found 4 pieces of treasure. So we have 2d6, we have a d8 and a d8 here. Okay, so we have two 2d6 rolls on currency. So I would have found 6, an ancient coin worth D3 times 100 gold points, or 100 gold. So that would also be worth quite a bit of an experience. And a platinum coin worth 2d6 times 10. And then we have D8 art objects. And we also have, so these are both art objects, so D8. So we would also have 2 rolls on the D8. So we would have found fancy chalice worth 66 gold, and an elven tapestry worth 2d4 times 100 gold. So this would have actually given us a lot of gold and a lot of XP. We also have D12 rolls for precious stones, D20 for treasure chests, D10 for equipment, and D10 for magic items. D100, I should say, for magic items. Now, magic items, their value does not translate directly into experience points. Magic items are just kind of worth what the magic item is. And then we get into our section on NPCs, and NPCs also covers monsters. And the stat for an NPC is pretty basic. We have a CR, which is your challenge rating, and that acts as the difficulty rating of any checks made against the NPC, both in and outside of combat. So they have one stat that handles everything. They have their own HP, they have their own armor points, movement, and their XP, which is how much XP they are worth when they are defeated. We have some different morale here, how an NPC's attitude might be towards the player characters, and a personal treasure chart to determine if the NPC has any treasure on them. And then we kind of get into our GM section here, where we learn how to populate a dungeon, how to create an adventure, how to set traps. Traps do use a combat or a challenge rating to overcome, and they also have a concealment value, and that's how easy they are to find and to avoid. And then we get into some details about how to describe chambers and corridors and your various levels and wandering monsters if you make too much noise, and the distance also of your traveling. And then here we get into a section all about preparing our adventures. And a dungeon, an adventure will have an overall difficulty rating, and that is a DR. And then individual things in that dungeon will have a challenge rating that is somewhat based on the DR, or there is at least a relationship between those two. And so it's pretty easy to come up with enemies in this game because the enemies will be a basic stat block and they will have a challenge rating that is associated or is in relationship to the chosen level of play. And that is usually the level of the adventurers. So you will have anything from level 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. And then you can also determine the enemies or the traps, how much health they have, how many armor points they have, and so on. So it's pretty easy for the GM here to come up with various NPCs and monsters, and the difficulty of the traps and how deadly they are. However, I would have liked to have seen more examples of NPCs, more examples of monsters, and also more examples of monster abilities. The abilities section for coming up with abilities, it just kind of tells you to use your own imagination. I would love to see a list of abilities that you can use, and also a more detailed bestiary, maybe with some examples of NPCs, of monsters, and for traps. And I would like to see those also kind of separated out into levels, because that will make it a lot easier to roll up random things as we are playing the game, especially for solo play. And that's one place where I think this game falls a little bit, is the lack of random tables for those kinds of challenges. I really would like to see more random tables, maybe a small book of random things for the GM who doesn't want to prepare a lot, or for the solo player. So in the box, we will also get our GM screen, and we have some basic rules here. So all of your basic rules on what you might need. We do have a few miscellaneous tables here. I would also like to see some more miscellaneous tables for coming up with quest ideas and that kind of thing. I like random tables. I find them really, really useful, especially when coming to a game that I'm unfamiliar with. Now, these things I really like. I am a big sucker for handouts like this, and it kind of just makes me feel like I'm actually going into the store. So when your characters go into town and they want to go to the weapon store, you can hand them this pamphlet here, and what weapon for you, mate? And then you can buy your weapon, and it has all of its stats and everything there. I think that is super cool. If you want to go into your armorer here, you can go into the armorer and the healer and the merchant. And so this is for that store. And then here we have a cool little table here for all of the things you need to roll up with for your character. I love stuff like this. I love little handouts. I love little placards. I love little things that represent individual things about a game. And we also get, for that quick play guide, we do get some pre-made characters that you can use. So you can jump into this game pretty quickly. And then I'm sure some of you have noticed this map. I'm sure this map will be translated into English when that comes out, when the full translation of the game comes out. I think that looks pretty cool. You will get a book here of character sheets. Now, these are all in Polish. And you will also get a booklet here for all of your dungeons. And right now that is in Polish as well. But I have a feeling, let's see, level maybe in Polish, door, secret door, dead end, and stairs maybe. The universal hieroglyphics of the dungeon. You know, anybody, these will unite people from around the world there. Language independent symbolism. But yeah, so that's about everything that you will get in your base game. And I think it will also come with some dice, at least my prototype did. And then there are also, which are super cool, we have the My Little Dungeon box and the Monstrous Menagerie box. Now, I think it would be really cool if this box here, in addition to coming with all of your standees, so we have like an altar there, we have that frog god altar, we have a treasure chest, we have some traps that you can place out in the dungeons, weapon rack, various kinds of doors. I think it would be super cool if this also came with a book of random things to roll on for each one of these. So the frog god could have a page with a D6, D10, D12, whatever roll for certain things that are associated with this particular tile or with this particular standee. That would do a whole bunch. That would go a long way in helping the GM who maybe isn't prepared just come up with random encounters and random things to do in the dungeon on the fly. And that would also help with solo play a lot. Now, each one of these doesn't need to come with its own random chart, but you could have a random chart for all kinds of different doors, and they could be trapped or locked or things like that. And they could have different types of traps. Different thing for this magic circle, or maybe a magic carpet, something you find under the carpet. A roll for what you find in this tomb here, or a magic axe, or maybe what's in that bag. Maybe a random chart about what happens if you drink the liquid in this fountain. I think that would be really, really neat. And I think that would go a long way in just making this game a little more accessible to the low prep GM and the soloist. And so you do get these cardboard stands here that you can attach to your standees. But I'm not a huge fan of these. They're okay, but I have a whole bunch of plastic stands that I always use for my standees. So I find those a little bit, just a little bit more useful. And then, in addition to the My Little Dungeon, let's take a read here and see what it says here. A daring treasure hunter leaps over the trapdoor and bursts through the double doors into the chamber at the end of the corridor. It's the dragon's treasury. The vault is supported by 4 columns, and along the north wall, there are coffers filled with golden valuables brimming to the top. Suddenly, a roar comes from the corridor, and the beast turns to its lair. Fortunately, the statue in the corner makes a perfect hiding place. So then you get a little display of all of the things you'll get in there. And then we also have our monstrous menagerie, which is a whole bunch of awesome standees for monsters and also for heroes. And just look at the scale difference here. Here we have a hero, probably some kind of rogue there, and that's her with her hand crossbow. Coming up against this giant, I think this is called a pillow golem there, but yeah, that is super cool. We have some kind of Norse giant there. And then some kind of slime monster, a troll of some kind of death knight maybe, or maybe a hero, a player character, some kind of golem, not golem, but maybe a vampire warlord there. Here we have a normal adventurer. A skelly here. Love that skeleton. The art on these standees is so cool. Some kind of frog. Maybe this is the frog sorcerer that worships this frog god here, and he is protecting the frog god from being tampered with. But you'll get a whole bunch of others, and this would be a great opportunity for this box here to come with a zine that has stats and abilities for all of these creatures in it. I'm really hoping that something like that is included. Here we have a giant dragon. Here we have some smaller creatures, and we have some slime molds there. Oh, look at that guy. That guy is super cool. So I really like these kind of desert warriors there with the turbans and their scimitars. Some kind of cultists. That adventurer there. Those skellies. Some orcs. Mimic. Yeah, these are really cool standees. Very stylized. The art is very stylized. Who did the art in this game? Do we have? Let's see. Illustrations. Andriana Wisniewska. I totally butchered that name, but there are all the credits there. You can read those much better than I can pronounce them. So yeah, that's everything that I got in this prototype. I think it looks pretty interesting. Like I said, I would like to see just a little bit more in terms of what it can offer the low prep GM and the soloist for things to just roll up on the fly. And coming up with things that you don't need to prepare for. Those are things that I look for when I am looking to get into a new game. How easy is it to roll up random things to encounter so I can keep my games going and I don't have to prepare an adventure for myself or for other players. But I will post a link to the website. You can follow along You can find out about their crowdfunding that is going to be coming up very soon. And hopefully some of that stuff gets addressed, but I think the rules are pretty solid. It has a nice kind of easy flow to it. I think things, because of that exchange of blows in combat, how the players can do damage from defending and from attacking, will probably speed up combat. I like the skill system, the random skill system, and I also like how the spells are incorporated, how you don't have different levels of spells, but you can cast each spell at a different level. I think that's really cool. So, all right, you guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed this look at Slay the Dragon. We will talk to you later. Bye-bye.